This is your Enhancement Talent review for WWE SmackDown Live, July 23rd, 2019. In case you did not know, it was the night after Raw Reunion. And I know that because they played at least 25 different video packages to highlight last night's Raw Reunion show. I did a review on Raw Reunion yesterday, if you want to look at that. Overall, I thought it was a short-sighted show that had some fun moments, but nothing to get excited about going forward. But, on the other hand, this SmackDown right here, this was a damn fun show. This was one of the best SmackDown shows I can recall in a long time. There was still some Shane McMahon stuff, but it was not overbearing or overwhelming, and it was highlighted by a couple very, very good promo segments. The one critique I can give overall of this show is that there was pretty much like no wrestling at all, which, you know, is a turnoff on a wrestling show. And there were two matches in particular that, you know, if they had time given to them, could have made this an A+ show. But nonetheless, even without that, I thought this was a very good show overall. Just a couple flaws with the not having enough wrestling on the wrestling show, but other than that, we will get into everything that occurred on this SmackDown. Starting with the recap of Shane McMahon and Kevin Owens on last week, and the weeks prior, Owens and Shane's whole storyline. New Day, Big E and Xavier Woods are apparently going to be guest commentators for the night. It was supposed to be Shawn Michaels on guest commentary, but I guess that didn't happen for whatever reason. And Byron and Corey Graves were not there, so it was Tom Phillips, Big E and Woods, and David Otunga. And what an interesting combo, as two of these guys, and Tom Phillips and David Otunga, are dead behind the eyes and have no emotion or charisma at all. And then you have Big E and Woods, who are the complete flip 180 of that, and they have so much charisma that just oozes through. That's it. It was an interesting pairing, because the only things that you will remember from commentary tonight are the things that Big E and Woods were saying. Shane McMahon enters. They get the whole best in the world introduction. The crowd chants CM Punk. And Shane talks a bit about Raw Reunion and how Kevin Owens wasn't there and he was glad he did not have to see him. And mentions the challenge that Owens made to Shane McMahon to face him at SummerSlam. And if Owens loses, he will quit. So Shane accepts, and that's another thing I'm curious about, is like the gimmick of the match is if Owens loses, he has to quit. But like, what does Owens get if he wins? Just a moral victory? Will anything actually change? I feel like there should be on the other end that if Owens wins, then Shane has to be taken off television or something. Like, it just seems a little one-sided there, that Owens was the one that made this challenge and did not want to get anything in return for winning that match. But nonetheless, Shane accepts Owens' challenge, and Shane says, he brings up that it's not the first time Owens promised that he would quit. as he plays footage from last year in August on Raw, the night in, I believe, Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Owens' hometown. If it wasn't Montreal, it was somewhere near there in Canada. In fact, I think it might have... I don't think it was Montreal. I think it was somewhere else in Canada, maybe Toronto. But nonetheless, Shane plays this footage. And the footage where Owens loses the open challenge to Seth Rollins, and he quits, only to come back the next week. Shane says this time he wants it in writing that Kevin Owens can't come back. And it is kind of weird that they're mentioning this storyline of Owens quitting last year. But they have yet to mention, to my knowledge, the storyline that took place with Owens and Shane a couple years ago, which culminated in a Hell in a Cell match against with Shane and Owens. So that's a bit odd, and it's weird too because back then it was essentially the same storyline, except Shane was the babyface and Owens was the heel. It was kind of the same thing. Like Owens was tired of the way Shane McMahon ran SmackDown. Except in this case, he did it in a heel way as opposed to a babyface way. But I would argue all day that in that storyline, Shane McMahon was the total heel. But that's not how they wanted to present it. Owens interrupts after this. Owens says that the version of himself that Shane showed on the Titantron there was the old one that Owens talked about before, that wanted not to piss anyone off and toe the company line and all that. Owens wants to fight Shane now. Shane tells him if he does, the match is off. Shane gives Owens a match against Roman Reigns in the main event of tonight instead, which was strange that Shane is going to try to get Roman Reigns to do his bidding, but I guess he just expected that to work. Shane walks to the back with Elias and Drew. This was after the commercial. Elias sucks on Shane McMahon's dick for a few minutes. Oh, Shane, that wasn't just brilliant. It was genius. Shane assigns Drew McIntyre as the special guest referee for that match, Elias as the special guest timekeeper, and himself as special guest ring announcer for the Roman Reigns versus Kevin Owens main event. After this, we got Shinsuke Nakamura, the Intercontinental Champion, versus Apollo Crews, and this was, surprisingly, a good match. I don't know why I say surprisingly. I mean, both of these guys are good wrestlers, but it was a solid match. And maybe it's surprising just because of the amount of time it went. It didn't go a crazy amount of time. It went through the split screen ad break, and then after that, it wasn't too much longer it lasted. But to go through the finishing sequence here, Shinsuke hits his smooth as silk sliding German, the one where he has Apollo propped on the ropes and he just slides through as he's sliding to the outside of the ring, hitting a German suplex. Just smooth as hell. Great move. He goes for the Kinshasa after this, but Apollo gets in an Enziguri and an angle slam by Apollo Crews for a great near fall. That was a good little callback to Apollo befriending Kurt Angle towards the end of this run. Crews goes for a standing shooting star press soon after. Nakamura gets out of the way and hits the Kinshasa for the win. Would have loved it if this had a little more time. I felt like if you went from here and just went into some more near falls and some more fast-paced action, this could have been a really great match, but nonetheless, it was a good match. Nakamura attacks Apollo after the bell, and hits him with another Kinshasa on the outside, as Big E and Xavier Woods are pondering where Apollo's friends are. Why isn't anyone helping him? And Big E even just says, I mean, we're not going to, but someone should. Yeah, they just sounded like dicks there. Like, I mean, that was, like, they were putting over Apollo, like, the whole match, like, how good he is. And then he's getting attacked, and they're just like, we're not going to help him, but someone should. After this, they did a Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose backstage segment. This was hilarious. Like, I don't know what went wrong here in the lines in this. If it was like, if it was edited badly, or like, for one, if this was a pre-taped segment and someone allowed this slip up to happen, then I'm very confused. Because Mandy mentions that she talked to Shane and mentioned something about how the Iconics didn't like him or something. I don't know. I don't remember. It was some sort of gossip bullshit. And Sonya asked Mandy why she did that, and Mandy says because it got them a match. And so Sonya asks if it's a tag team title match, which Mandy says, and I quoted it, "Yup, and if we win, we deserve a tag team title match." What? So Sonya asks if it's a tag team title match. Mandy says yes, and if we win, we deserve a tag team title match. How does what? Like, but that's not what. But I doesn't compute. Well, I don't know how that slipped through, because I imagine this was a pre-taped segment, but that made absolutely no sense. So I guess the Iconics will face Mandy and Sonya next week, and if Mandy and Sonya win, they get a title match. Or depending on which part of the promo you want to believe, then it will be a title match next week. I'm still not sure. But yeah, they're running through the 3 tag teams they have in the women's tag team division. We got the Kabuki Warriors match last week. They were nowhere to be seen this week. And so we'll get the Mandy and Sonya match this week. And then that'll be all of them. And they keep this weird sort of sexual tension with Mandy and Sonya still going. I don't know if they ever plan on even paying that off, or if they're just messing with people. But it was still there. We had Miz TV with Shawn Michaels. And Miz kicks to a Raw reunion video package straight away. Miz then introduces Shawn, and Big E and Woods on commentary are absolutely treasure, as they are singing and dancing to Shawn's music the same way I would in all of my preteen years, around 12 years old. Shawn and Miz talk about what I wrote as useless shit until Dolph interrupted. And surprisingly, this is where things actually started to get good. But first, Dolph once again name drops Goldberg for the second time in the last 2 weeks. And I don't know what the deal is, because like the last promo he did with The Miz, he said something about something being Goldberg bad. And in this case, Dolph says every time Shawn comes back out here is embarrassing. And he says it's as embarrassing as Goldberg in a wrestling ring. So, like, these Goldberg lines, they gotta stop. This isn't. We're not getting a Dolph versus Goldberg match, are we? I mean, it's just strange. Like, it seems very much like a petty thing that whoever's writing these promos has has some resentment towards Goldberg for the match he put on at Super Showdown with Undertaker. And so they continue to put that line in there. It just seems petty. Dolph says when Shawn came back to wrestle in November that it broke his heart, he says. Says it was embarrassing. And Shawn agrees, says it was embarrassing. But then he follows up with, the only thing more embarrassing is working your whole life just to be a second-rate Shawn Michaels wannabe. Ouch. Truth hurts. Dolph claps back, saying that there's only one second-rate Shawn Michaels, and it's Shawn himself. Miz ends up cutting off Dolph, saying, just do something already, and that he whines about how it should have been him, but in this company, you have to make it be you. Which, Miz is doing a great job right now as the bland babyface with a talk show segment. Miz inclines Dolph to do something again. Dolph goes to walk away. Shawn pulls him back. Dolph swings at Shawn, who ducks, and Dolph ends up hitting Miz. Shawn punches Ziggler back and knocks him to the ground. Shawn goes to check on Miz, but Shawn turns around into a super kick from Ziggler, who then scurries away. And this promo, for one, it was done with such intensity, especially with the Dolph and Michaels parts. And Shawn was surprising here because he delivered his lines very well with a lot more passion than what you would expect from Shawn at this point. But the problem was, to me, is that this didn't make me interested in seeing Dolph versus Miz, which is what this match is going to. It just made me want to see Dolph versus Shawn. And that's not going to happen. But it took me back to a time, probably, 5-6 years ago, where Dolph Ziggler versus Shawn Michaels was a dream match. And, obviously Dolph has been flattened out to nothing since then, and it isn't the same aura about it that it would have been then to have a Shawn Michaels versus a Dolph Ziggler match. But it took me back to that time where I would have wanted to see that match. So that is the problem, though, is that Miz versus Dolph is the destination for this. And I don't really have much interest in that match, but this was a really good segment. Well done parts by Dolph and Shawn. And, Miz was good too, but I felt like he was majorly the third wheel in this segment. We have Ember Moon versus Charlotte, right? And then this is the only part of the show that actually made me upset. Because we get Ember Moon and Charlotte, they don't get entrances. We come back from commercial and they're both in the ring. The bell rings. They go for maybe 30, 45 seconds before Bayley's music interrupts, and it distracts Charlotte enough for Ember Moon to come in from behind and roll Charlotte up for the pinfall victory. When they showed that this was going to be a match, I was excited. I said, okay, this is great. You can have a good 10, 12 minute maybe Charlotte versus Ember match. Ember can get a big win, and that'll make her more credible going into the SummerSlam match with Bayley, because Ember needs some big wins and something to make us think that she has a shot of being SmackDown Women's Champion and beating one of the most credible women in the division. And Charlotte would have been a great step forward in that regard. But even though she did beat her, it was just in such a lazy way. This to me is just lazy writing and lazy creative that, you just gotta get through. Because this match only happened for what they wanted to do in the post-match angle. which was Bayley and Ember end up celebrating on the outside, but Ember throws Bayley into the ring to Charlotte, who boots Bayley, and Moon would lay out Charlotte with an Eclipse and one for Bayley as well, which is good, because this is what I said last week, is that I would have liked to see that same edge out of Ember last week after Bayley gave her the title match at SummerSlam, that Ember just, shoves it in her face and attacks her. And, it doesn't have to be a heel turn. It can just be, a baby face with a purpose. Because, I mean, how many times did, Stone Cold just stunner a baby face for no reason? It doesn't make you a heel. It just makes you have a purpose, to me. So at least better late than never. I mean, it's good that Moon showed that sort of edge here, and that she wasn't just here for, oh, I'm going to face my friend Bayley, and it's going to be such a fun match, and I can't wait, and it's going to be so fun to have a championship opportunity. Nah, F all that. The post-match angle was good. The tease of actually having a good Ember Moon versus Charlotte match, no good. Kofi Kingston comes in, and we go back to the commentary desk as Big E and Xavier Woods are gone. They were only there for the first hour, and Michael Cole comes in their place. And the cameras are on the commentary desk at this point. And Michael Cole just looks like he wanted to be anywhere but at that commentary desk. I can't even describe the look on his face, but he looked so uninterested in being there. And I can't really blame him. I don't know why they needed Cole to come in to fill 1 hour of TV time. I mean, I don't know. I'd imagine Cole is one of the guys that's there anyway for both shows, with his positioning among the production staff and all that. But I don't know that to be a fact. So if he did indeed have to come to an extra night of TV just to be on SmackDown for an hour, then that I do feel for, because they could have easily just done Tom Phillips and Otunga or whatever. So this is where they then the other thing is, though, I wanted to mention, is that Cole and Tom Phillips is like a father and son team, as they're both essentially the same person. I'm not sure who has I guess Michael Cole is louder, but they both say the same things. They both look similar. Tom informs us here that Byron was not there because of the loss of his father last week, which, terrible to hear. Over the last couple months, Andrade, he lost his mother and his aunts in the same week, I think. And Byron, with the loss of his father, condolences to Tim. I always thought he seemed like a very good guy. So I wish the best for Byron. Kofi is set to announce his SummerSlam opponents. So this is 2 weeks in a row that the champions are choosing their opponents, with Bayley just choosing Ember Moon last week. But in this case, it was the person that clearly should have been the number one contender anyway. So Kofi doesn't waste any time in saying that he wants to face Randy Orton at SummerSlam. And Kofi invites him to the ring so he can talk to him face to face before he tries to attack him from behind. And Orton comes out, and Kofi reminds us of the Madison Square Garden show 11 years ago, where Kofi was first starting to really get over, and really get over as a top guy, where he beat Randy up all over the arena, putting him through tables. And this is where it turns into a shoot, or a worked shoot, rather. As Kofi says that was supposed to be the moment that took him to the next level, but that's not what happened. And he says that Randy used his influence backstage to hold Kofi back, which he prefaces it so that we know that that this isn't a storyline anymore. He says this is real life, which that's one of the things I absolutely hate when they do. Like, the rest of this isn't real life. It's like when Cole last month, every time Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins, he would call them a real life couple. So that just annoys me. All of this is real life. Come on, commit to kayfabe, and that's where these work shoot sort of segments sort of fall apart. Is like, what does Kofi mean in this promo in kayfabe? Like, if someone were watching this and didn't know that wrestling was scripted, then what would they think Kofi is even referring to? So Kofi says, since that moment, he kept on grinding. He found the power of positivity and became what Orton never wanted him to become: the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. Orton admits to holding Kofi back and says he did him a favor, and says that Kofi was not ready back then, and he's not ready now either. Orton says Kofi's run is a fluke, and that Randy has stayed on top his whole career, and he didn't have to work hard for it. All he had to do was be Randy Orton. He never had to fake a Jamaican accent. He never had to throw pancakes into the crowd or shake his ass, Orton says. And Orton goes as far to take credit for Kofi's moment at WrestleMania. And he gives the reasoning that I'm not sure anyone had thought of, but he's absolutely right. If it were not for Randy Orton, Kofi Kingston would not have won the WWE Championship at WrestleMania, because in the build-up to the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, it was not Kofi Kingston that was going to be in that match. It was Ali, who was injured at the hands of Randy Orton. And so, if Ali doesn't get hurt, Kofi doesn't get inserted into the Elimination Chamber match, and there is no WrestleMania moment for Kofi Kingston. Kofi again challenges Randy to the match at SummerSlam. Randy says that Kofi's fairy tale ending will fall to the hands of the three most devastating letters in WWE: RKO. This was good stuff. It made me really want to see this match. I mean, I already did, and I'm glad that they intertwined these two's past into the storyline. And I think with the next few weeks going into SummerSlam, that this can be a really strong build going into that show. And like the worked shoot comments, I don't normally like it when they go that route, just because I always think it just sounds lame, and it just doesn't make, like, when you can tie it into a kayfabe sense is what I like. But in this case, it was more on the outside of that. But nonetheless, for me and what I'm watching, because, as far as most people that are into the product enough to know what they're referring to, then it works for those people. It's just the people that don't understand or are more casual fans of WWE that I think it comes off as sort of lame or doesn't make sense. So I'm kind of looking at it from that perspective. But nonetheless, very excited for this. After After the promo, Joe comes out for a match with Kofi. Randy decides to stay at ringside, and you knew right away when Randy decided to stay at ringside how this match was going to end. Kofi's already beaten Joe once. I mean, I don't know what it's going to do for Kofi to beat Joe again. I wouldn't make him look better, but I mean, Joe is already 6 feet under as it is. So, at some point in the match, Randy runs in and tries to RKO Kofi. Kofi fends him off. Joe goes for Randy to put him in a Coquina clutch, but Randy gets him with the RKO. Kofi hits the Trouble in Paradise on Randy to stand tall to end the segment. Predictable that this match would not have a finish, especially with the Smackville show coming up with Joe in the title match. And we can mark number 9 times that Samoa Joe has failed to capture a WWE World title in that match. After this, more good stuff. This was awesome. Finn comes in to do an in-ring interview. And it's with Kayla Braxton. And they play the clip of Finn being attacked by the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, on Raw last week. Finn, who is clearly shaken up by all of this, he challenges Bray, or the Fiends, to a match at SummerSlam. And after he does that, and I popped big for this, and so did the people in the arena, which I was happy to hear, that the Firefly Funhouse music hits. Yes. And Bray has a Funhouse segment, and he says that, and he's in his Mr. Rogers gear this time. He's aw shucks Bray Wyatt this time, and not the Fiend. Bray says that Finn is so brave, and he says that he and his puppets too are a fan of Finn, but that the Fiend is not. Bray says that the Fiend accepts his challenge, but Bray warns Finn that the Fiend is no man, he is an abomination, the Fiend is power, and the Fiend remembers. Maybe remembering things that happened with Finn and Bray in the past. Bray says, Bray does the let me in thing, and they do a cutaway edited sort of thing where it goes to the Fiend doing all the spooky stuff. And the Fiend also says, let me in. Superb stuff. I'm very, very into Bray Wyatt, and it's one of the things that we questioned about this character, is that how does it work with a live audience? And they've played it masterfully so far. That there's 2 whole different personas. There's the Firefly Funhouse Bray, and there is the Fiend. And the Fiend is who you don't want to mess with, who will show up in the arena, while Bray, the Firefly Funhouse Bray, is the utter opposite of that, seemingly. So, I love what they're doing with Bray right now. I'm very excited for his future. Charlotte has a backstage interview, says, and also, just to put a bow on this, I'll be kind of disappointed if Finn is not the demon persona for this match with him and Bray. Just because the argument against it is that you don't want to have Finn lose as the demon. My argument for it is that it makes Bray's win mean that much more. But nonetheless, others disagree with that. Charlotte has a backstage interview, says it's a disgrace that she is not on SummerSlam. I think it's a disgrace that her match with Ember Moon only had 1 minute of in-ring action. She says that Bayley chose Ember Moon to be her challenger, and that is a disgrace. And Charlotte promises to be on SummerSlam, and that her opponents will be better than Ember Moon. I wonder who that could be. Main event time. I say that with loose quotations. Shane comes out as the guest ring announcer. He introduces Drew and Elias, and they do all this, and then they go to commercial. Then Owens and Roman get their entrances, and both of them are in the ring, and then Shane has to do the goddamn introductions for them. At the point of the bell finally ringing, there was 5 minutes left on the show. Before the bell would ring, though, Owens would grab a mic, says he will run through Roman, Drew, and Elias to get to Shane. Roman also got a mic and took exception to Owens saying that he will run through him. And after that, we finally get a bell. Nothing happens in the match. There's a few headlocks into the turnbuckle, which leads to Drew pushing Roman and Owens. Roman punching Drew and throwing him over the top. A scum breaks out, and a scrum breaks out. And in the end, the baby faces end up clearing the ring and getting to Shane McMahon. Roman hits a Superman punch into a Stone Cold Stunner by Owens. The crowd chant one more time, and Owens picks up Shane, hits another stunner, and the crowd was going nuts for this. Owens was so incredibly over on this show, and just even just as much, I think just seeing Shane get his ass kicked was really over. And so Owens, after he hits that second stunner, he grabs a mic and says he's going to do the unthinkable at SummerSlam and make Shane entertaining, because everyone will be entertained by the ass whipping he gives him on that show. And that is the closing angle for the show. Other than the disappointment of the Roman and Owens match essentially not happening at all, I thought that this was a really good ending segment, because I don't need to see Shane and Drew and Elias stand tall to end the show at this point, because it's just Shane has as much heat as he is ever going to need in his life. He has enough heat to keep him warm on a cold winter's night. If his heater stopped working, he could just use the heat that he has acquired throughout the past few months to keep him warm. Because he's been shoved down the audience's throat for so long over these past few months that he has all the heat that he needs. He doesn't need to stand tall to end shows. So, it's the same sort of concept with Vince McMahon and Stone Cold. Almost every time, Steve Austin would end up standing tall at the end of the show. And so you have to use that same thing with Owens. Owens needs these moments more than Shane does. The only thing I do wonder about, though, is that Shane said earlier in the night that if Owens attacks him, then the match would be off. But in this case, Owens and Reigns both attacked him. So is he going to cancel the match? And I still reiterate my query from earlier, that why is Owens just wanting this match without a reason for Shane? Because if Owens loses, then he has to quit. But I still feel like the stipulation should be, if Owens wins, then Shane has to be taken off of television. Or something to that effect. And if the reports are to be believed, that is the reason for this feud. So I'm curious as to how they'll do it. If Owens will just beat down Shane so much that it writes him off TV. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, overall, this was an entertaining 2 hours of SmackDown. As I mentioned at the top of the show, the only thing it didn't hit was the wrestling portion of the wrestling show. But, you look at the Finn and Bray segment, I thought was really well done. The intrigue of Bray Wyatt is still there. The Dolph and Shawn Michaels stuff was great. Owens being Kevin Owens was very good. And Shane did not suck the life out of the show. They bookended the Shane segments. He was at the beginning and at the end, but other than that, we didn't see him, which is good because there were SmackDowns in weeks past where Shane would be in like literally segment after segment after segment. So at least in this case, it didn't suffocate it too much. But yeah, good stuff. I enjoyed this show much more than Raw Reunion. But that's all I'm going to give to you guys today. As always, do the YouTube stuff. Thumbs up, subscribe, comments. Let me know what you thought of the SmackDown show. And me and Chris Kirby will be back on Wednesday for the podcast version of the Enhancement Talent podcast. We'll do some news bits, maybe talk about Raw Reunion a bit, get Kirby's take on all that. And I'll be back on the YouTube channel for the Raw review next Monday. But until then, take care.